Okay, we have a few people here with us. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's session on Ayurveda. Make sure you've got something to take notes with, either pen, paper, device. I believe we're going to be doing a lot of learning tonight and taking in a lot of information. So my name is Bissy. I'm the research manager here at the Villij. And today we're joined by Dr. Sairupa, who is a naturopathic doctor and an Ayurveda practitioner. So a lot of her focus is on womb health, fertility, pregnancy, postnatal care, and also psycho-spiritual care. And as a doctor, she really aims to provide non-judgmental care that's rooted in compassionate and trauma-informed lens and framework. So today we're going to really go into our own personal what's called bioenergy within Ayurveda and how we expand our self-care toolbox. So I'm going to share some quick house rules in the chat as usual before I pass it over to Dr. Sairupa. But just as a note, this event is going to be recorded. So for those of you who are comfortable having your camera on, please feel free to do so. And if you're wanting to engage, you can do so in the chat or unmute. Dr. Sairupa is going to be kind of going through a slide deck at first. So I'm going to be monitoring the chat for questions, but if there's anything that's burning that comes up, please just unmute yourself and ask her, because I know she won't really be able to see the chat. Okay, Dr. Sairupa, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Great. Hi, everyone. So wonderful to be here tonight. Yeah, Chanel had invited me to share on Ayurveda in the Villij, and I was so excited when she shared with me about the Villij and just that it's a BIPOC wellness community. Yeah, just completely drew me in, of course. I always start my sessions with a land acknowledgement, so I'm just going to do a quick land acknowledgement, and then I'm going to share a little bit more about myself as well. So I am currently in Oakville, Ontario. So this is a place that's in Southern Ontario. And I give thanks to this land and its First Nation people, the Anishinaabe, Atawandaron, Haudenosaunee, and the Mississauga of Credit First Nation. And as a settler on this land, I voice my solidarity with Indigenous people and express my gratitude to live, to birth my children, to work and play on this land. I honor this land, its waters, plants, animals, and ancestors, and all the vital elements of creation that exist. And I also ask that if you're able to just take a moment to take a few breaths before we begin. So if you can sit in a comfortable place and maybe just lengthen up your spine a little bit so it's taller. And I like to put one hand on my chest and one hand on my belly. So I just drop into my body a little bit more. And then I'd love for all of us to take 3 breaths together. So as you breathe, just inhaling into your belly and then letting that same breath rise up towards your chest. And then you can exhale out from the belly and then out from the chest. Inhale into the belly, letting that same breath rise up to the collarbone. And exhaling out from the belly and out from the chest. And one more breath, just taking it in your own time. Okay, and then when you're in a comfortable place, you can just roll your shoulders back and gently open your eyes if they're closed. So thank you again for being here. I'm going to share my screen so I can share my slide deck. Okay. So we're talking about Ayurveda tonight. Ayurveda is often known as being a sister or sibling to yoga. And I'm going to share more about the definition of Ayurveda and get more into its origins. But first, I'm just going to outline a little bit about what we're going to be talking about tonight. So the outline for tonight is I'm going to talk about the origins of Ayurveda. And we're going to talk about the definition of Ayurvedic health, which is just so unique and beautiful, always resonates with me in terms of being really focused on self-responsibility. We're also going to talk about some of the factors or foundations that allow us to live in health. I call this the wisdom of life. We'll also talk about dosha theory, which is based on the elements of nature. And dosha theory, if you know Ayurveda a little bit, we'll talk about 3 different constitutional or bioenergy types. And so I'm going to introduce these bioenergy types. And my hope is that if you don't already know your type, you'll get some information about what that might be. We're going to talk about the 3 pillars of health. In Ayurveda, these 3 pillars of health or 3 pillars of healing are really unique, laid out in a beautiful way. And I'm just going to dive into those a little bit further. And then towards the end of the presentation, I'm going to share a really beautiful, what I call is like a pleasure practice, a sensory pleasure practice that is a traditional practice in Ayurveda. It's something that is taught as an important aspect of self-care. It's oil massage for the whole body. And so I'm going to share more details on how to do this so that this could be a takeaway for you all as well. And we're going to do a journaling prompt, and it could be something that you do in session or you just take away with you as something to reflect on. It's really going to be about anchoring into your own self-care practices. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about my own personal story about how I came into Ayurveda. But first, let me just share with you this quote. This is from Deepak Chopra, who is an Ayurveda guru in the States. Healing is the return of the memory of wholeness. Healing, health, whole, and holy all mean inclusiveness. Body, mind, spirit, environment, relationships, social interactions are all one wholeness, and you're a part of that one wholeness. So Ayurveda is so much about looking at the whole picture. Ayurveda as a medicine that comes from the East, from India or the South Asian continent, is really about looking at how the macrocosm, like the greater universe, also exists within us, exists within every human being, also exists within the plants, anything living. So that means whatever elements exist in the universe also exist within us. The reason why I came to Ayurveda was actually, I had done a teacher training back in 2006. I wanted to share that back in those earlier 2000s, it was really hard to find any BIPOC yoga teachers. But I was so fortunate. I did end up connecting with a beautiful person named Heather Greaves. She's in Hamilton, Ontario, if there's anyone that knows, is familiar with that area. And she was teaching a 200-hour yoga teacher training at that time. This is my ancestral medicine. I want to share that first, is that this is something I also grew up with in some ways as everyday life, but I hadn't learned it formally. And when I was introduced to Ayurveda for the first time, the concepts of Ayurveda, I was really moved, and it really just resonated. It really clicked with me. And so I went on to further studies with it. But I'll share a major reason why. And that's because in my earlier 20s, I had a huge exacerbation of eczema. And eczema had been something I was dealing with for a long time. So, chronic condition. I had dealt with it on and off since childhood. I had been in and out of dermatologist's office. My most recent flare-up at that time was like a full body eczema flare-up, so itchiness all over my body. And dermatologists were often explaining to me, well, there's nothing really much you can do. It's just happening on your skin. So use the hydrocortisone cream, and that will just help stop it. Basically, they told me I was unlucky. And when I inquired more about if there was anything I could do through diet or anything else, it was always no, there's nothing else you can do. So I would take the hydrocortisone cream and use it to kind of put a Band-Aid on the eczema coming up. But when I decided to kind of go into Ayurveda, to seek out a practitioner in Ayurveda, the thing that really moved me most was that practitioner that I saw, who's also my teacher and like long-term teacher. So this was like, probably 10 to 15 years ago. She had said to me, what is happening, in your life right now? Like, has there been a heartbreak? What else is going on? And so at that time, that was the first time someone was asking me about my emotions. And there was, something that traumatic that I had been going through at that time. And the stress piece and the emotional piece was a huge trigger to my skin condition and these lesions that were coming out through the surface of my skin. And partially because maybe I wasn't able to express at the time what was going on. But what I appreciated about this framework of healing was that there was a real understanding and care for what was happening on deeper layers. My Ayurveda practitioner would say that we can do the healing through the gut, through the digestive system, because there's such a huge connection to all parts of the body. So this was the first time that I was asked to follow a specific diet, and following that diet, addressing my emotions, learning about self-care practices, was a way that my skin completely shifted and I no longer had flare-ups at all. Like if I have a small flare-up now, it's because of the specific season that I'm in, and it's never needed to use hydrocortisone cream as a Band-Aid. So this sort of holistic way of looking at the body is Ayurveda. It's looking at the wholeness of each individual. Ayurveda really will emphasize that you don't treat the disease that someone's experiencing, but you really work on treating the person, because each person is so unique and made up of a different combination of elements in their body and their system. So this is a little bit about my experience coming to Ayurveda. And when I started studying Ayurveda, I was around the age of 22, 23. And I completed a program, but I decided I wanted to do further study. And part of it was because I wanted to understand the body in even more depth, coming from also a Western perspective. So I studied naturopathic medicine as well. So that's how I also I work, as integrating both naturopathic medicine and Ayurveda together. But I always look at someone's constitution, and I always come from that framework of, who am I sitting with? Who am I getting to know? And working with the wholeness of what they bring. Everybody is already whole, right? Everybody is already whole. And something that happens in Western medicine is there's so much separation that happens. We look at different pieces of our body. For example, you go to the gynecologist to take care of your uterus and your ovaries, or you go see a neurologist for specific other conditions that might be happening. But when it comes to a holistic way, we're acknowledging that there's so much interconnectedness already. And that can be a really profound way to work on healing.
Before you continue, I actually have a question speaking about how you do both Ayurveda and naturopathy. Do you mind speaking a little bit more about, your experience with both of those things, and also like what draws you to one more than another, and how does that kind of help or inform how you work with your clients?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So I would say Ayurveda is like a soul practice for me. So I feel like it kind of overlays everything I do in terms of how I interact or work with patients. And most people will find me or work with me because I have an Ayurveda background. So I typically don't work with people outside of like if it's just naturopathic medicine alone. But the reason why I like to combine them, the reason why I find it really helpful to do an integration of both is because Ayurveda here in Canada, it's not regulated, whereas naturopathic medicine is. And so it gives me a little bit more room for working with people um, in in a little bit more of a medicalized way when needed. So, I do still requisition lab work and I integrate both blood tests, some supplements, and then looking at Ayurvedic nutrition and lifestyle. And that combination can be really helpful for people as well. Um, so, so yeah, the integrative piece I feel like is helpful because we live in an integrated world as well. So, there's people that might be on medication or taking supplements already, or all kinds of different things. So combining both, yeah, it suits the way I practice for sure.
Oh, those are really great points. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. So let's break down the word Ayurveda. Some of you might already be familiar with Ayurveda and the definition of the word, but just to break it down again, Ayu means life and Veda means wisdom. This is in Sanskrit, so this is like an ancient South Asian language. And I mentioned that Ayurveda is also a sibling or a sister science to yoga. So they really go hand in hand with each other. A lot of people will be practicing yoga and then learn about Ayurveda because Ayurveda really works on some of the physical aspects of the body, such as nutrition, or even beauty practices, or the daily rituals that can help us to sleep better and detox better. And that goes really well with yogic teachings as well. So Ayurveda, meaning the wisdom of life or the science of life, really looks at, again, the macrocosm as the microcosm. Ayurveda is a 5,000-year-old medicine tradition. Some people also refer to it as being like a mother of healing, or one of the most ancient medicines there is. I think that it's comparable to other indigenous medicines around the world, whereas there is an honor for every single person being connected to nature, that you are nature, that you are nature embodied. And I like to say that you are the elements and the elements are also you. So by elements, I mean the 5 elements, which I'm going to go into more detail about. A beautiful aspect of Ayurveda is that there is a encouragement and an emphasis on building and nourishing your own connection and relationship with yourself. So there is an emphasis on building and cultivating this personal relationship with yourself. So if anyone's done somatic work before, where you are asked to drop into your body, feel your feelings, feel what's coming up, this is what Ayurveda has been teaching us all along. So as an ancient medicine, it encourages this sitting with yourself, tuning into what's really coming up. And then with that information, knowing what you might need from that. So for example, now that it's starting to get colder, so I'm starting to feel that the weather's shifting, I'm noting that my upper back is feeling more tension, and this is a tendency for me. So we all might feel different tendencies to come up in the seasonal junctures. Seasonal change is a really important part of Ayurveda, of looking at the seasons and knowing what to do. Because when we know what to do in the seasons, we can actually prevent the discomfort, or maybe even little colds or pains or aches that might come up because of the seasonal changes as well. So because of the seasonal change, I know I'm going to be proactive. I can feel what's coming up in my body. So I know I'm going to start wearing more scarves. I'm going to wear socks on my feet, maybe even wear something around my lower back to keep it warm. So, all of these things, drinking more hot water. So Ayurveda asks us to tune into ourselves moment to moment. So just to check in if there's any questions so far. If not, I'll keep going.
No questions in the chat, but if anyone wants to stop and ask questions now, they can.
Okay, great. So I'm going to share with you the definition of health from the Ayurvedic perspective. So the Sanskrit word is swastha, and I'll share with you what this means. Basically, the Ayurvedic definition of health essentially means that your digestion is working effectively. Your detox mechanisms, such as bowel movements and urine and sweat, are working effectively. And you feel well in your mind, in your body, your spirit, and then also your senses. So, your senses are really considered important in Ayurveda. Senses are the gateway into understanding the world around you, and into also understanding your emotions within. So, taking care of your senses and nourishing your senses are a part of health and well being. So, I always highlight that because it's often not something that's talked about in other wellness traditions. So, sensory care is huge. Swastha, one of my favorite definitions is to be established in yourself. To be established in yourself. So swastha means to be centered in yourself or anchored in yourself. So as I was speaking about, Ayurveda guides us into a deeper relationship with ourselves because this philosophy teaches us to tune in to what we're feeling and to understand what we might need, and to ask for what we might need as well. So the way that I like to describe this definition of health is to be established in your self-knowing, your self-knowledge, to know that you can care for yourself. So to know your own inner nurturer, that part of you that you know you can count on, to be gentle with yourself, to be tender, to offer love to yourself. And self-trust, right? Because you have established this self-knowing and this understanding, and you can trust in this wisdom and this knowing to care for yourself. I never see healing as being like A to B, like a linear process where you look at only one outcome. But I see it as being more as a circular sort of way of deepening your connection with yourself, because there's ebbs and flows to healing, right? So once we get to a certain point, sometimes there might be a little bit of a turning point where you're like, oh, I'm off track a little bit. But the more that you find the ways to care for yourself, you know how to map your way back to that place of centeredness. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So it's deepening your relationship with yourself. So I'm going to share some of the wisdom philosophies here in Ayurveda. These are foundational theories, and these theories really give more insight into what Ayurveda is. So the first one is like increases like. So what this means is that any quality of something will add to that quality in something else. And I'll give an example so it makes a little bit more sense. When someone has anxiety, there might be a rapid heartbeat, and there might be a faster breath as well. And in that anxiety, there also might be like a lightness, a lightheadedness. So this is something that, these are symptoms that often kind of coincide with having anxiety. Of course, anxiety can show up in so many different ways. However, this light quality and this fast quality that can come up with anxiety, a light quality food could be coffee. So coffee also can cause a rapid heartbeat and can give a feeling of lightness as well. So if we're having anxiety and we add something of light quality to it, it can exacerbate those symptoms, right? It can exacerbate the way we feel. We look at like increases like as a way to understand what kind of medicine we might need. So if we're feeling anxiety or feeling that rapid heartbeat, then we want to counteract or pacify that energy with something soft, something heavier, something warm and lubricating. So a common remedy for anxiety in Ayurveda is actually using oil, warm oil, a herbal oil, or even a food-based oil like sesame seed oil to massage the feet and to kind of calm that lighter energy and bring it down. Another example would be, I always use the example of acne as well. So if acne is coming up on the skin, there's usually an increase of oil coming up and creating a little bump, and that bump will have congestion in it. So if we were to take something or eat something that also has a quality that is congestive or inflammatory, something like dairy, so dairy can also have that quality that's heavy or congestive, then that will possibly add to that acne and not help it. Whereas if we're taking away the congestive things, then that can improve the acne. So that's just one kind of example, another example. But I want to say, of course, these things are much more complicated, and there's several different ways to work with both anxiety and acne too. Another important factor in Ayurveda is food as medicine. So Ayurveda, being a 5,000-year-old tradition, has always talked about looking at the gut. So always coming to the digestive system as a key to healing, a key to well-being. Food is looked at in the qualities I just mentioned, and looked at through the elements as well. And so knowing your own constitution can give information about what you should eat and what might not be as helpful to eat. So what might cause a little bit discomfort or even issues with health in general. Let's look at ginger, for example. So ginger is a beautiful medicinal food, so lovely for digestion, so great for nausea, and amazing for anti-inflammatory. It's actually very helpful for pain as well. And as a medicine, it is so great to use for someone with a colder body type because it is warming. However, if we use that same medicine for another constitution, someone with more of a fiery constitution like Pitta, it can actually increase the heat in their body, which makes sense, right? So food as medicine and learning about your own constitution can highlight which food is medicinal for you. Now, the next one is honoring the seasons. Ayurveda emphasizes honoring nature seasons. So all of the seasons that come in a 4-season climate, but also looking at the in-between seasons. So the seasonal shifts are really important to look at and protect yourself, keep yourself healthy, and maybe even pay a little bit more attention to your needs during that time. And Ayurveda also emphasizes looking at your own individual seasons of your life. So for example, if you're going through a personal transition, whether it be work related, whether it's a loss of some kind, looking at the pandemic as an intense season to go through. And then also looking at pregnancy as a season or postpartum as a season. Ayurveda gives beautiful guidelines to support oneself through seasons of life. Whenever there is a lot of change or shift or even stressors happening in one season of their life, it's really emphasized to come back to your routine, come back to everyday routine, regularity and routine as much as possible. And that's with sleep and also with foods. Ayurveda has always talked about movement as being so key for health. However, again, movement's individualized as well. So, if you are going through a stressful period, you may not choose to go for like the high intensity or even hot yoga, but going for yin-based yoga, restorative, or really slower movements, or even just gentle walking can be the most beneficial for longevity and for well-being. I always say emotional wealth, kind of like that term generational wealth, but emotional wealth. So you're really emphasized, encouraged to take care of your emotions in Ayurveda. If we repress our emotions and rather than release our emotions, in Ayurveda, they say they can actually build physical toxins in the body as well. There can be like chest pain, or there can be digestive issues that come up as well. So caring for your emotions in the sense of releasing, expressing, maybe it's through journaling, maybe it's through talking to a close friend, talking to a therapist, whatever it might be, that's helpful. Always releasing. And that again comes back to, what am I feeling in this moment? What am I truly feeling? And being honest with that emotion that's coming up. Yeah. And, as long as it's safe for you and a safe space for you to explore that, it can create a sense of wealth, in the sense that you are understanding your emotions, you know how to express, and then you also will benefit in terms of your health. I mentioned the importance of sensory care as well. So, Ayurveda teaches that we should be caring for all of our senses every day. Putting rose water over the eyes at night can be amazing, especially if you've been in front of a screen for a long time. You can get like a beautiful rose water, or even just cool water. Cool water on a cloth can feel amazing over the eyes. Ayurveda recommends putting a little bit of oil in the ears as a way to calm the body as well. Scraping the tongue. So if anyone has heard of the importance of this, you'll know that once you start scraping the tongue, it's so hard to go back. Basically, a tongue scraper is this U-shaped tool, and you would use it every morning and scrape from back to front to help detox or cleanse the tongue, because the tongue is considered to be an organ of detox, where there's some toxins or buildup that will show up on the tongue. Scraping the tongue helps to eliminate that and also supports your digestive system. So I highly recommend it. And you don't even need to go out and buy a tongue scraper. You can also just use a spoon in your house as well. Yeah, so give it a try. To be mindful of your stress. So we all know stress can be depleting for one's system. And this means just, putting tools into place. Like being part of this amazing community is a huge benefit in terms of stress management, and, just being proactive in terms of all of your self-care practices. Ayurveda also recommends clarifying your relationships. It teaches that we should be clear in terms of what we're receiving from each relationship we're in, what we're receiving, what we're giving as well. So this can be a really great tool for looking or taking an inventory of the connections that are no longer nourishing for us, and another place to also build boundaries to protect ourselves and to care for ourselves more. And the last point here is that Ayurveda also suggests that once you know better, like once you know your constitution, try to make choices that are healthy for your constitution as well. And of course, we'll be getting more into constitutions shortly. Any questions on some of these things that I shared here?
No questions, but a lot of people are saying, some people use spoons or tongue scrapers, or even oil pulling as well. Actually, oil pulling I've heard of, and I've been told that it can help prevent cavities and things like that, but I don't know if maybe you want to speak to any other benefits of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So oil pulling in Ayurveda is recommended as being like a daily practice to do. And you would typically do it after you scrape your tongue. And you could take, traditionally in Ayurveda, it's just sesame seed oil. It's cold pressed sesame seed oil. I know like we hear a lot of coconut oil, but let's say we're looking at some of the older teachings, it would be cold pressed sesame seed oil. That means it's just not toasted sesame seed oil. You just take a spoon of it, and then you can swish it in your mouth for about 3 minutes. Some of the teachings recommend going up to 15 minutes or something like that, but just simply for good oral health, good for the gums, good for the teeth. They say it's anti-aging as well, so it helps like to protect the skin around your face, and tone the muscles of the face too. So it's a great practice to do. In Ayurveda, there's like a huge list of daily practices. It's called dinacharya, daily practices to do in the morning, and daily practices to do at night, nightly practices, and then seasonal practices as well. They're so beautiful. They really are. And they make a lot of sense as well. So yeah, oil pulling is fantastic. And yeah, so people are tongue scraping already. That's great. Yeah, it's something that I definitely can't leave out at all. It's part of my everyday rituals for sure. And it's interesting in India, like even some of my family, like they may not like this could be like a daily practice starting from very young. Tongue scraping is just part of everyday life there. Um, and I find it pretty interesting that sometimes it's so foreign to people to think of like cleaning the tongue, but it just seems like a natural thing to do for sure. So now we're going to get into talking about the 5 elements and the tridosha, so the 3 constitutions. So first, let me break down the 5 elements. So firstly, there's space. And space signifies the space in our body, like all of the spaces in our body, the space in our lungs, even in our stomach, in our uterus as well. And space also signifies our emotions and our mind. The next one is air. And air is reflective of the breath, the prana or life force energy that we take in through the air around us. And that's primarily what it signifies. And the next one is fire. Fire is representative of our digestive system. It also has a really big impact on our hormones. If fire is weak, then your metabolism or the way that you digest or absorb nutrients won't be as optimal. The next one is water. And water, as we know, we're made up so much of water. We have so much water in our body. It fills every cell as well. And this is our blood. And then earth is our bones. It's the matter of our body. So our bones, our teeth, and our hair as well. Now, everybody has all of these 5 elements within us. So each of us have everything. However, some of us have a stronger combination of some elements than others. And this is what makes up the tridosha. Each person is born into the world with a combination mainly of 2 primary doshas. And the doshas are vata is air and ether, pitta is fire and water, and kapha is earth and water. And so each dosha will carry on the same sort of energies that each element carries on as well. When a person comes into the world, they already contain 2 primary doshas. This is called your prakriti, your original constitution. However, through everyday life, maybe it's through also small traumas or bigger traumas in life, maybe it's through major transitions, then your constitution will change. And maybe it's 1 dosha or 2 doshas that can rise up and actually get a little bit higher in your system. When I was going through my eczema experience, where I had a full body eczema experience, I'll share that my vata, which is a drier quality, so it has that air to it, was coming out more pronounced, creating drier skin on my body that I wanted to itch. And anything related to itching, really severe itching, can also be related to fire. So both my vata and my pitta were elevated. I apologize if you can hear my baby in the background. She's with my partner right now. I think she's probably getting changed because she doesn't like that very much. So this is an example of like what was happening in my own constitution. If someone is having migraines all the time, then they might also be having a stronger pitta coming up in their constitution. And so we look at both the original constitution and we look at the current state of a person. And usually the current state that they're in, we work at calming that or pacifying that state so that you're closest to your original dosha, your original constitution. And most people will feel best at their original constitution. This gives really beautiful, powerful information about how we start to know ourselves and get to know what we need more. because I'm Vata and Kapha, like this is my tendency. This is my original constitution. I have a pretty cold constitution, so I know that I need to always be mindful of my temperature and care for my temperature and stay warm. Whereas someone that has a Pitta and Kapha constitution, they might need to protect themselves more in the sun or in the heat this summertime. So I hope that gave a little bit of an intro to what the tridosha is in terms of the bioenergies, and we'll get to know each one now. So let's talk about Vata to start. So again, this is space and air. And we are looking at first what a Vata person sort of presents like. So Vata people typically will have a very light frame, a thin frame, so smaller bones, petite features, drier skin. So this is a tendency. They always will have drier skin, and a regular appetite. So that means they're not always very hungry. They might be gassy or bloated because there's more air in their system as well. And mentally and emotionally, they are artistic, spiritual, dreamy, intuitive, spontaneous, may have a tendency towards anxiety. And if in balance, their tendencies would be dry skin rashes. Constipation is a big one because of that dry air. Like their colon will be dry as well, and their stool will be dry. So they might not go to the bathroom very often. And when they do, it could be quite dry stools. Insomnia is really common to have as well, just because there is like a more, they say a mobile energy, a mobile and light energy. And to have deep sleep, we should have a heavier quality. So the earth dosha, Kapha, will have a better sleep than a Vata will. Vatas will tend to have insomnia and also have like very, very vivid dreams. They'll also have a tendency towards having pain in the body, including menstrual cramps could be quite severe. For a Vata type, I always imagine a dancer. So a dancer loves to move, like just really like hears a song, wants to move their body, or even just dances to move around their space. Movement is such a part of their being. They really thrive off of movement. And they're also artists. They're so often artists and just really brilliant in the way they think outside of the box. So you might be resonating with some of these traits, or you might actually just start to think of people you know that really fit these traits as well. So to balance out Vata, especially during the fall and early winter season, Vata tends to come up more for people as well. The best ways to balance this energy out would be to create more stability. Maintaining a stable routine is the best way to create more stability. Eating at the same times as much as realistic, right? As much as realistic for you. Sleeping at the same times every night, or I always love to recommend like a wind down clock. So you are setting an alarm for yourself, and that alarm will be maybe ringing at 9 p.m. and give you a reminder to start to turn down the lights, light some candles, listen to relaxing music. So you're just kind of preparing yourself for bed as well. And trying to get into bed at the same time. And then choosing activities that you have sufficient time for and time to complete, because we don't want to feel too overwhelmed, right? So about the person will have a tendency to feel overwhelmed because they'll be reaching for a lot of things at once, or have many projects on the go at once. So yeah, just saying no to some things can also be really helpful for Vata. Welcome rest. So this means sleeping in on the weekend a little bit, or even taking a nap in the day. Maybe not a full nap, but just laying down and closing your eyes can be really helpful. Favoring wholesome, fresh, warm food. Nourishing foods. So the best thing for a Vata is to avoid raw foods and cold foods altogether, and having more soups and stir fries and roasted veggies. This is really helpful for a Vata digestive system, which, as I mentioned, tends to be irregular. Yeah, and avoiding anything that is bitter tasting as well. So bitter tasting food can just not be suited for a vata. So avoiding the raw, the bitter, stale food, and then protecting against any cold weather, any breeze, wind, wet environments, just staying warm as much as possible, staying cozy, always have a scarf. And then, yeah, making an effort to embrace that warm energy in your life, warmth, and rituals, routines, having like salt lamps in your space, nice candles, anything that really invites that warmth. And the next one is Pitta. So for Pitta being the fire and water dosha, this is the hottest dosha. Physical type, generally pretty average in type, average frame, tendency to have like more toned muscles, like athletic build will naturally come up. So just naturally more toned muscles. And oilier skin tone is common. Strong appetite and digestion. So these are your friends or that your friends or even yourself that might say, I don't have any issues with digestion. I can pretty much eat anything and be cool. I'm fine with that. And then mentally and emotionally, they're very intellectual, extremely organized, disciplined, really direct, natural leaders, passionate, type A personalities. And then their tendencies will be to be more workaholic type. So just getting too involved with work. They will have tendencies towards acne, red and itchy skin rashes, diarrhea, heartburn, acid reflux. Those are all things that can come up if a pitta digestion is out of balance. And then insomnia as well is another one, because a pitta person will be just thinking about work a lot. So it'll be difficult for them to get that restorative rest. And and then migraines, headaches can be really, really common. And the strengths of a pitta person, sharp memory is huge, really sharp. They have a strong willpower because of that discipline. So if they put their mind to something, they'll persevere and achieve that project that they have clarity on. They're really passionate and enthusiastic. And, I always see my activist friends, like some of my activist friends can have a really strong pitta constitution where they will get really passionate about what they're working towards and organizing towards. So for the Pitta constitution, in terms of balancing, we want to harmonize Pitta through an energy of peace. So serenity is a really beautiful energy to bring in, especially for a Pitta person that's so work-oriented and project-focused as well. So bringing in peace as soon as they are closing their laptop or coming home from work, whatever it is, important to have that calm energy within their space. Rising with the sun and going to bed at 10 p.m. is a beautiful ritual. Planning activities ahead of time to reduce any stress or pressure. Because again, Pitta will be taking on a lot of projects because of the work passion. And again, saying no to projects that might create stress or tension or just discomfort because they're taking on too much. Pitta people should definitely be consuming calming or cool foods. These are foods, like just as a few examples, are things like fresh herbs like cilantro, fresh mint, basil, anything green can be amazing, including the bitter taste is fantastic. So arugula or bitter gourd. Kale is also a bitter taste. Dandelion, those are all so good for a pitta person to consume. And they should be avoiding hot foods, spicy foods, alcohol, oily foods, salty, fried foods. Those things can trigger pitta or exacerbate pitta if they already have some elevations of it in their constitution. Typically avoiding the use of stimulants is advised for a Pitta person. I'd say especially alcohol because it's quite heating. Coffee might also be a trigger. Pitta people will want to protect themselves from the sun because in the sun they might have a herpes outbreak, they might have skin rashes that come up or even headaches that come up. So staying in the shade or wearing a big hat. And and then again, embracing that serenity and calm energy as much as possible in their everyday life. So the most beautiful practice would be to commit to a meditation. And maybe this is only 5 minutes, but a 5 to 10 minute meditation can be such a powerful practice for a Pitta person to commit to that peace, that energy of peace. And here's Kapha. So Kapha people tend to be very curvy and voluptuous. They have a thicker frame, very full features, a healthy glow, and a healthy appetite, a really glowing skin, very clear skin. They tend to have really white teeth and healthy teeth. So their bones are strong, their teeth are strong, their hair is thick and strong as well. Mentally and emotionally, really compassionate and empathic, devotional, already really routine and stable as well. So this is just natural for them. It's actually harder to get out of routine for a Kapha person. They have a natural draw towards staying in situations and being rooted somewhere. But yes, their empathic energy is beautiful. They will be intuitive and feel things from other people and be really beautiful listeners. However, their tendencies are sluggish digestion. So that means they may not feel hungry very often, but they'll still be craving to eat certain foods. So we have to stoke their appetite. We say stoke their digestive fire with actually more warming spices, which I'll talk about. They'll have mucus conditions such as phlegm or asthma, sinusitis, allergies as well could come up. Might have lymph congestion, and they might even have some lumps or bumps under their breast or in their breast. They might generally feel heavy feeling, and they might have a tendency towards feeling lethargy, low motivation, or depression as well. And just as a note on that is that, during the winter season, especially when there's snow on the ground or when it's a colder, damp season, then Kapha, this energy can get a bit stronger, especially if there's no sun. So doing things to uplift this energy is really important too. So the strengths of a Kapha person are they're so loyal, so incredibly loyal, loving, compassionate. They have such high endurance and stamina as well. So if they are athletic, then they just have a fantastic stamina. And Ayurveda also says they're like the most amazing lovers as well, which I think is really beautiful. And they have a listening heart. So they're your friends, or maybe this speaks to you as someone that listens, just sits with you, listens to you, hears you, and is there for you. Well, yeah, so this is a beautiful Kapha energy. So I'd love to hear from you if any of these resonate at all. Maybe you'd want to type in the chat box which dosha might stand out to you most for yourself. I'm curious if one speaks out to you.
Shari says that she falls into all three categories, or feels that she falls into all three categories.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely possible to be tridoshic as well. It's actually more rare to resonate with all three, but you might notice certain points that come up quite strong in all three. But yeah, it's very possible to be tridoshic for sure.
Kalisha saying both Kapha and Vata. Sarwa says resonating with Kapha and Vata. Kim saying Vata. Simi saying Pitta and Kapha. So yeah, I think it sounds like there's a mix.
Nice. What about you, Bissy? You?
I think it's Vata, to be honest with you. I was feeling attacked while you were going through that one.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I do see a couple of questions, but just for the sake of time, I know we've got about 30 minutes left. I'll save some of them to the end, but yeah, this is great.
Okay, great. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like we have a lot of Vata Kapha. I'm also Vata Kapha. So that's cool to hear. So Kapha balancing, just a quick note on that is awaken with the sun every day. The energy of stimulation is really important for Kapha. So think of this during your winter time. The energy of stimulation, you need that, right? To just kind of like uplift spirits as well. So this means, maybe you want to choose a stimulating physical activity to do every day, breath work to do every day, going for a walk, opening up yourself to a new course, new experience, favoring food that is warm for your body and pungent. So garlic, ginger, chili, all of these things are actually really helpful to cut through the mucus or the heaviness that kapha can bring on. It makes so much sense, right? So in the wintertime, you wouldn't naturally go towards something heavy like ice cream, right? And this is where like you want to have more ginger tea, much more ginger tea, and maybe even have like chai, like a chai masala with cinnamon, cardamom, ginger. All of that's fantastic. Yeah, and then you want to avoid the heavier foods, cold foods, oily foods, rich foods, sour foods, and salty foods are all the things to avoid. And to keep warm, keep protected against, again, the cold environments, the damp environments, snow. And here's the big one for kapha is to release old baggage. So kapha people might tend to hold on to a lot. So they're your also your friends that might have like Now magazines from the 90s. So if you all know that reference, you might be from the GTA. But these are, you want to release the old baggage, embrace and release, like letting go as much as possible. Yeah, so old clothes, and maybe it's friendships that are no longer serving as well. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to talking about a few of the pillars of healing in Ayurveda. These are preventative care. This is the foundation for preventative care. And just a note on each is that these are the focuses to stay connected to swastha, to be connected to your relationship to yourself, and providing your like love to yourself on a daily basis. So nourishment is number one, choosing the foods that are best suited to you and the season that you're in. The second one is rest, and that means ensuring that you are resting as appropriate for you as well. And the third one is managing your resources, your energy resources. So this means putting boundaries on yourself when you need, knowing what your energy leaks are. So whether that's work related, relationship related, whatever that might be, this is a good place to reflect on that too. And then finding ways to protect those resources. So you're helping yourself to sustain those resources as best as you can. And one of those things is to protect your senses. So we talked about the importance of this in Ayurveda, the emphasis on sensory care. Sensory care is a way to nourish your internal resources and prevent this excess leak as well. Sensory use can be a leak to your energy resources. However, when we nourish our senses, we can revitalize and re-energize our inner resource. So an example would be like the most common one that I can think of, which is like overuse of social media or overuse of screens. And so when we're using our eyes and we're using these sorts of things in our life on a daily basis, it can actually be depleting for our resources, our energy. So how do you put boundaries around that? So you're caring for your senses. Another one would be what are you watching or taking in or reading that could be causing you internal disturbance as well, whether it's something violent or whether it's taking in news that you are triggered by. Saying no to certain things can be one of the best ways to nourish yourself and to protect your resources. Ayurveda suggests cleansing your senses. through, as I mentioned, maybe it's putting rose water over your eyes, tongue scraping, swishing with oil, which we talked about, putting oil in your nose. Some of you may have heard of Neti Pot before, which is cleansing your nose. And protecting your senses as well, right? And, protecting your senses. My main practice that I love to share is through oiling the body. So this is a pleasure practice. And in Ayurveda, this is what is suggested as a daily ritual to give yourself a lot of strength, resource yourself, nourish your skin. And we're going to go into more details of it. So this is Abhyanga. This is self-touch massage. In Ayurveda, it's said, like in the old school scriptures, in the older teachings, it's said that applying oil to the body will prevent aging and will keep the joints strong, prevent arthritis, help to beautify the skin. And any oil that's applied to the body will also be absorbed by the body. So this is why it's so emphasized to only put anything you would put in your mouth on your skin. I love to share about this practice because this is one of the things that really helped me to heal my skin condition, my drier, my eczema flare up. However, I will say that when I first heard about this practice, because it's full body oil massage, and I thought to myself, how can someone have the time to do something like this, right? Is it really accessible to people? Well, what if they don't have strong mobility? What if they're living with chronic pain or chronic illness? How is this really accessible? But over the years, I have learned ways to tweak it so that it can be accessible for people and all kinds of people, because you don't always have to apply oil to the whole body. You can apply oil just to the hands or to the feet or even to the face. And just that act alone can be a moment to tune into yourself and to feel what you're feeling, right? So allowing yourself to tune into your emotions, to tune into the truth of the moment with yourself. So, besides being amazing for the skin, you'll also find that when you start doing this on a regular basis, this also does give an impact to how you feel when you step out into the world. Ayurveda considers oil massage as also being protective for the energy body. So if there are people that kind of tune into that spiritual side of themselves, sometimes when we feel empathic, we start to take in things from other people, whether it's nervousness or anxiety or discomfort or whatever feelings might be coming up. But this practice can actually be helpful for protecting yourself from that as well. So let me read through some of these points. Applying oil to the body helps to beautify the skin, bring balance to the constitution, and offer a sense of nourishment and pleasure to your being. Skin is the largest bodily organ. The quality of oil matters. Avoid perfumed, rancid, or mineral oils. Avoid lotions as well, or anything fragranced. You can use essential oil, though, like a few drops in some of these food-based oils. Sesame seed oil, cold pressed, not toasted, is considered to be tridoshic, great for all constitutions if you're unsure of yours. Coconut oil is great for pitta, good in the summertime. Almond oil is really good for vata, great in the fall and winter. And then olive or sunflower oil is great for kapha in the later winter time, or kapha in general. Kapha people are very oily. They tend to have very oily skin, so they might not like the feeling of oil on their body. But these are the oils that typically are considered to be good for kapha. The Sanskrit term for external oil application is called snehana. And the root of the word snehana is sneha, which means love. So this is just another beautiful self-love practice. Oil is considered to be like motherly, nurturing, loving to apply. So yeah, I'd love for you all to experiment with this on yourself. and yeah, just see what kind of comes up. So this is how to. So you'd warm the oil first. What I recommend is getting like a small, so let's say you have a glass bottle. It could be a smaller glass bottle filled with oil, small amount of oil, and you place that into a bigger pot of warm water. So you let the oil just naturally, very slowly raise its temperature. And then once it's warm enough for your body, get into a nice cozy room, nice calm lighting, and you'll start to apply the oil to your body really slowly and intentionally. Maybe you're not doing your whole body. Maybe you're just doing your hands. Maybe it's just your feet. Maybe it's just over your heart. And see what it's like. See what just applying a little bit of oil is like. You want to take it the full measure, the full distance. Is you'll start applying to your major energy centers first. You could do your hair. So starting at the top of your head, your heart, your abdomen. And then you'll start going in circular motions, starting at the belly button. Circular motions from right to left. And then anywhere on your long extremities, go lengthwise. Do as many strokes as you feel comfortable. And then on your joints, going in circular motions and just making sure you pay attention to every joint as well. So taking your time, I've had teachers say, take your time with this, use as much oil as you like. I have to be honest with you all. Sometimes, like if you look at this mug, sometimes I might use about this much oil on my own body, especially in the drier season. And it feels so nourishing. It feels so amazing. Um, so, so yeah, once you complete this process, you would go into the shower after this, let the hot water penetrate the oil deeper into your system. And you come out of the shower and you just dab yourself with a towel. Now, you don't need to use soap on your body. So I actually encourage people, if you do have any skin conditions, eczema, any dryness, you don't need to use soap on your body, but you can. If you have like a loofah or something like that, you could use that and see what it's like. Your bath, I always give this feedback, because your bath can get slippery. So you just want to do a scrub down after as well. But don't let like the bigness of this kind of self-care practice intimidate you, because it can feel really luxurious or really big. I really encourage you to try it. And again, if you feel like it's too much for your own system or body, just try to apply it to your feet and your hands and just see how that feels for your system too. Doing foot massage at night can be so lovely, such a nourishing practice. And so I am going to now move to just my last slide on something to contemplate on, and then I'd love to just check in on questions as well. As I was talking a lot about self-relationship, tuning into yourself, paying attention to your own resources, learning to nourish ourselves and finding anchors for health, for swastha, is such an ongoing journey. Understanding what nourishes ourselves and fills our cups allows us to go on to nurture and nourish our loved ones and community in a healthy way, which you all know, of course. What are the self-love practices that help you to feel truly nourished and resourced? And, I'd love to also check in to see what natural elements might resonate with you most. So let me just say that you don't have to journal on these now. Feel free to take these questions with you. We can also talk a little bit about them, or if there are other questions that are coming up, I'd love to hear from you. So if there's any questions coming up now, we can chat a bit.
Nothing that's coming up right now, but going back, I know that Kalisha said that she took a quiz once, and it said that she was kapha in the mind, but vata in the body. From your own, I guess, background understanding, does something like that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's another layer by Ayurveda as well, is that sometimes what is happening in the mind can be coming up as characteristics of one specific dosha as well. But not always. Sometimes you could be a vata kapha and also have, a vata mind. So it really just depends. And the quizzes can be great feedback. So sometimes quizzes can be really great feedback on learning more about yourself. And then I always say seeing a practitioner can be helpful. It's not always necessary, but just to kind of understand another layer as to what might be happening too. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Simi wants to know, how often would you recommend doing this self massage? And actually, even to add to that, like, how often is it okay to have, these oils really penetrating your body and your skin?
Amazing. If you can commit to doing it every day, they say to try to do a 21-day habit of it to really notice the benefits. However, it's always advised not to do during your period, not to do while you're bleeding. And that's because in Ayurveda and yoga as well, it's seen that like there's a specific downward energy flow that's happening during your period. And we just don't want to mess with that by changing, by applying oil and changing the direction of the flow. Yeah. So that would be a contraindication for it, is just not doing it during menses. Also not doing it if you have a fever, if you're ill. Yeah, so doing it daily is great.
That's actually a really good point, and I definitely have heard the point around like menstrual flow and just letting the body do what it needs to do during that time and trying not to interrupt.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. Yeah, there can be a lot of like sometimes with these older medicines, there's some guidance around, oh, you shouldn't do this during your period or you shouldn't do that, but there's oftentimes reasons for it, for sure. So yeah, it makes sense from that energy standpoint. Yeah. So what resonated with you was, is there, is this something like a practice that you all might take away from today's session?
Yeah, I'll give folks a moment to either put in the chat or unmute. But I'll say that I think I definitely took a lot away in terms of like gut health. I've been thinking a lot about, I've been working with folks actually a lot about like anxiety and how gut health can really contribute to that, understanding how coffee impacts my body. So hearing you like speak through some of the things makes me think like maybe I need to have more heavy foods in my diet, like something to help me kind of calm down and keep
Right.
me grounded.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. I'm so glad that it resonated because it's true. It can have such a huge impact. Great.
Kim is sharing that her self-love practices include cooking, flower baths, moments of silence, and she's going to be including the self-massages. I know I'm going to be including the self-massages, and I haven't really used almond oil before, but I think I'm going to give it a try.
Oh, nice. Yeah, beautiful. I love flower baths. Flower baths are, yeah, so powerful, so beautiful. That they're kind of like my, if I complete something I really want to complete, they're my like pleasure practice, right? Yeah, so beautiful.
Oh, Madison asks, do you have any suggested books or resources on Ayurveda for further learning?
Yeah, definitely I do. I really love all of the work from Dr. Lad. I'll put the name in the chat box so everyone can see too.
Yeah, actually, even if you wanted to include some of these like in Inner Village after, that would be great too. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to do that, definitely. I'll add these into Inner Village, but I'll also put the name of these practitioners here. I'm also just checking, there was a question from Simi about bitter food. Including more bitter food, definitely. Is it better to go for raw food? Yeah, it's interesting. So, like, you mean for a pitta type? Just to clarify. Well, maybe I'll mention a little bit more on that. Yeah, for pitta type. So yeah, it's actually not recommended to have too much raw, but pitta types can tolerate a little bit more. Ayurveda is not really big on raw food because they care so much for the digestive fire. And when we put something cold in it, it's harder. It's just harder to break it down and absorb it. But pitta types can tolerate more raw food than kapha or vata would be able to. But pittas should have more sweet tastes, naturally sweet, like sweet potato, like yams, things like that. Grains are considered to be sweet if you can have like a little bit of basmati rice, or having millet as well. Oats are considered to be cooling. And then the bitter taste as well. So the sweet and the bitter tastes are beautiful for pitta, and cooked is generally advised. Yeah. There's a lot of great recipe books out there for sure. I mean, it's just so endless, like learning about foods and doshas and Ayurveda. Great. Yeah, well, thanks for sharing about your self-love practices as well. Um, yeah, just on a last note, I wanted to read something that someone sent me today. Um, it's a beautiful, it's a beautiful poem, and I really loved it, and I felt like it really spoke to some of the things that we were talking on. So this is by Young Pueblo. They asked her, "How do you know the healing is working?" She answered, "When your mind is no longer governed by the past, and when you feel peace in situations where you used to feel tension, you more easily connect with joy and happily use boundaries to protect your well-being. The healing is real when your mind feels lighter and loving yourself becomes more natural." Yeah, so just on that note, thinking again, and just wanting to really emphasize that the goal is always just to be able to tune in and be truthful with yourself and come into relationship with yourself. And this is what Ayurveda teaches, and this is some of the most profound things that I've received from this wisdom tradition.
Thank you for sharing that. It was so beautiful.
Yeah, my pleasure. Great. So is there any other questions or thoughts right now?
I don't see anything coming up, but I can definitely say that by the chat, people were definitely resonating with a lot of the things that you shared today. And I'm looking forward to reading some of these books and people that you shared. So thank you for that.
Great, wonderful. Well, I'd love to stay in touch.
I'm actually going to share your Instagram,
Right.
and I'm going to share your website. So yeah, I'll be sharing that in the chat with everyone. I did just see actually a question come up from Kalisha. That just, how do you handle a Vata Kapha dosha? Do you have any quick tips that you can share with her?
Yeah, the best tip is to, if we look at both doshas, they're both cold doshas. They don't, if we can actually aggravate a little bit of vata with some of the kapha recommendations, but the best thing to do, and that's common between both, is to keep warm. So warm foods, warm drinks, and staying warm as much as possible is the best for vata.
Oh,
And yeah, trust me, I get that because I work with both of those doshas in myself. Great. So thank you all so much again for having me. It's such a pleasure. And yeah, I'll try to connect in the village as well.
yes, please do. I know people are probably looking forward to some of the resources that you may share. I know I'm looking forward to it. So thank you so much for tonight. Again, I've shared her Instagram and website for you to connect with. And just for everyone else, we will be having another event next week, Tuesday at 7 p.m., which is going to be on dealing with microaggressions in the workplace with Avni. So we hope to see you there. And thank you for joining. You deserve to be well. Thank you.